The Fatui Harbingers have a reputation for several notable traits that make them stand out from your usual cast. Not only do they all start out as a villain or in some antagonistic role which automatically makes them more appealing, but they each possess a unique playstyle or gimmick that sets them apart from other members of their cadre that, unlike other gimmicky characters, works to their advantage more than to their detriment. Even though the Archons tend to get the lion's share of Genshin's total appeal, if there was a faction that came at a close second, it would decidedly be the Harbingers. Only 3 are playable at the present moment, but it's safe to say Hoyo intends to make most if not all of them playable at one point or another. How long will it take to include all 11 of them into the game? Who's to say? We're 5 versions in and so far only 3 are part of the roster. But nevertheless, the infectious anticipation a huge portion of the playbase has towards the imminent release of Capitano, as well as an historically equal amount of excitement towards the previous Harbingers, whether positive or negative, sends a very clear message. The Genshin fandom loves the Harbingers, both from a narrative and gameplay standpoint, and I want to go over why that's the case in today's video. We'll be analyzing the 3 currently playable Harbingers to not only find out what gives them such a consistent presence, but also use it to theorize how future Harbingers will be designed. Contrary to what their low numbers might suggest, having as mentioned before only 3 playable ones despite us now being a version 5, the Harbingers have no shortage of presence throughout Genshin's history in more ways than one. Narratively, the Fatui has significant influence throughout Teyvat, introduced to us all the way back in Mondstadt and practically following us everywhere we go, with the confrontation against the Tsaritsa being built up to be this climactic event coinciding with Snezhnaya being the final region. Depicted as a shadowy organization with dubious if not belligerent intentions, they're often met with disdain or fear by other nations for their less than scrupulous actions, ranging from espionage to destabilization to illegal manufacturing to outright war. Emphasizing their impact and threat is the fact that they're either directly or indirectly involved in most if not all of the Archon quests due to their mission to collect the gnosis of every Archon for reasons that have yet to be fully uncovered. It's actually quite incredible how far-reaching they are, being responsible for Inazuma's Vision Hunt decree, laying siege against Liyue, artificially creating a new Archon through Scaramouche, and a variety of other activities. We've already encountered more than half the Harbingers, and including the ones that are playable, it's a foregone conclusion that each of them possess extraordinary power, with members like Columbina being outright stated to have strength on par with the gods. There even seems to be a degree of fear, distrust, and resentment among the Harbingers, noted by Child and Wander being rather nervous to confront Columbina, or Arlecchino's dislike for several of her cohorts. All things considered, the Fatui is one of the most omnipresent yet enigmatic organizations in the Genshin universe, serving as one of the 2 primary antagonistic factions alongside the Abyss Order. Such a nebulous cabal obviously piques the curiosity of most players, especially considering how strong they are. As the masterminds of most of the game's conflict and events, it's only natural for us to have a morbid fascination towards them. A fascination that subsequently turns into appeal that's been growing more and more over time. After all, when you're constantly bearing witness to world-ending events and crimes against humanity on a macroscopic level, it makes a person wonder how it would feel to be piloting such a force, fighting Child and Liyue, Signora and Inazuma, Scaramouche and Sumeru, and Arlecchino and Fontaine. These guys put the fear of God in you when you first confront them, or rather I should say some of them put the fear in God. It's a perfect combination of factors. On one hand, they check off the evil is hot trope, where people, especially anime lovers, find villains more attractive than heroes due to the mysterious forbidden fruit motif. On another hand, the continuous exposure and reminders you get of their power naturally has you wanting that power for yourself. If you see something overpowered in a video game, you want to try that overpowered thing. Finally, I'd be remiss to not give attention to the unfortunately non-negligible number of players who are shot up on so much of that good shit they genuinely believe in their heart of hearts that they can fix them. No, you can't. They're literal psychopaths, guys. What the hell? Dottore is not hot. You can't fix him, and I don't think you want to be broken by him either. When Shiloh was released back in version 1.1, Genshin was still very much in its infancy, and though the averted catastrophe in Liyue convincingly established the terrifying influence they have, it was still too soon for us to truly appreciate the faction and its prominent members. That being said, Child's pretty dick-headed actions against Liyue made him more infamous than famous, and from what I've heard, he was justifiably hated by much of the eastern player base for attempting to plunge an entire civilization 100 meters underwater. I don't blame them. However, from a gameplay standpoint, it took a while for people to notice it, but Child cemented himself as one of Genshin's most consistent attackers, front-running the enduring Child International team, a lineup that has maintained a respectable market share ever since its conception. It would be an understatement to call his playstyle unorthodox, especially for the time he came out. The other Hydra units we had were all supports, Barbara, Xingqiu, and Mona, and it would continue to be that way up until the release of Ayato more than a year later. Despite being a bow user, he converts into a melee attack style through usage of his skill, additionally transforming his elemental burst in the process. You'd be hard-pressed to even call him a bow user at that point, given most if not all of your time spent on him will be in his foul legacy stance. Thanks to his decent area coverage, courtesy of the Riptide effect, he can deal significant damage against groups of enemies and apply enough Hydro to set up Shangling for Vaporize, all while the 2 capitalize on the bonus damage from Kasuha and Bennett, one of the few teams of version 2 that have equal parts boss killing and mob clearing at the same time. And more importantly, while it is ill-advised to exhaust the full duration of his skill, having the option to hold on to a Raging Tide for up to 30 seconds is an incredible amount of uptime to have in a single rotation, even if he came out today. Child International was, and still is, one of the few teams in Genshin with next to no weaknesses. No issues with uptime, no issues with mobbing, no issues with bossing, sustain, anything really. Throughout the span of 3 versions, Child has managed to hold around a 20 to 30% pick rate despite his entire party not having been updated since version 1, and while it's realistically the only team he's known for, it's also the only team he needs. Taking into account that his party has not been touched whatsoever in 3 years, he might have been the most resilient DPS character of version 1, as even Hu Tao and Shao had to get retrofitted with new party members to keep up. Our second Harbinger, Wanderer, who came out in 3.3, also has a very unorthodox playstyle in addition to also being a character that you either love or hate depending on how you see him. Some find him intolerable for exuding excessive amounts of teenage angst and edge, while others find his interactions with Nahida to be endearing. Adorably, I've noticed a number of players dote on Wanderer and find his almost tsundere attitude really cute. And I can see why. He was dealt a poor hand in life, and I do appreciate that he's making an effort to turn a new leaf. Also yes, once again, the whole I can fix it mentality rings true with this one as it does with Child. From a gameplay point of view, for one, prior to him, Anima was almost exclusively thought of as a support element, a sentiment that was challenged by him and the 4-star accompanying him, Vars. Like Child, Wanderer's playstyle entails entering a stance type effect, levitating in the air and being able to attack while moving around, offering a steady stream of DPS and a lot of freedom and mobility. Everyone looks to be in agreement that he's only optimally usable with the max constellation Vars in tow, as the absence of any meaningful offensive reactions like Vaporize, Hyper Bloom, and so on prevent him from augmenting his damage otherwise. With the right team, however, you do have some very solid DPS, especially against a single target, and if you do pair him up with someone like Venti, he can also clear groups of enemies rather competently. As a hyper-carry-oriented attacker, vertical investment goes a long way with the guy. On top of that, Wanderer's short cooldown of only 6 seconds means he can get back up in the air right away. Not to mention, proper conservation of air stamina enables him to fight for extended lengths of time. It will take some getting used to though, seeing as no one else fights while airborne. Fortunately, unlike other hyper carries who get pigeonholed into a single team, Wanderer has some degree of freedom in that beyond Varzot, you can make do with a variety of supports depending on how good you are at maneuvering. General recommendations point to having a shielder like Zhongli, and Bennett is good for his own attack boost, plus the attack boost on Wanderer is a 1 passive, but it's not entirely out of the question to omit a shielder and run Farina if you can put up with a tighter margin for error. Because of his strong performance as a hyper carry and higher skill floor, despite never really entering mainstream attention meta-wise, those who elected to try him out have stayed loyal to him to this day, where he enjoys a rather stable double-digit presence in Spiral Abyss and plenty of attention as a character across discussion and social media platforms. Finally, our third, most recent, and arguably the most fan-favorite of the 3 Harbingers, Arlecchino, having just been released earlier this spring. Desire for Arlecchino to be playable spawned all the way back in summer of 2022, right at the end of version 2. While each Harbinger no doubt developed a cult following, most people were excited for Arlecchino, whose strong personality, striking appearance, and memes that she's Eula's evil twin sister made her an overnight sensation. Upon her announcement in 4.5 that she's coming in the next version, people were fiending for her release. Additional promotion was also made for her in the form of an animated short, providing background context on how she rose to her position and the power she has. In a similar fashion to Child and his siblings and Wanderer's desire to start anew, it appeared that her initial preconceptions of Arlecchino being an irredeemable scumbag was premature. While I wouldn't say she's completely on the straight and narrow, we know now that her heart's in the right place. As the first playable female Harbinger, there is also a degree of waifu appeal, compounding her popularity. For the third time, the I can fix her is strong with this character. Unlike her counterparts, Arlecchino's playstyle is a lot more intuitive and straightforward to understand on a conceptual level, but like them, she has a special mechanic from which the challenge of playing her is derived from. She draws power by absorbing bonds of life from her targets, imbuing her attacks with pyro and doing substantially more damage in the process. Through continuous replenishment of Bond of Life, Arlecchino is one of the few attackers in Genshin with actual limitless uptime, being able to maintain her attack state indefinitely. If my memory serves, she currently holds the title for the strongest attacker in the game in terms of DPS. Of course, not counting edge cases like Hyperwheel C6R5 speedrunning. Such power is not without cost, however, as she is completely unable to restore health through means other than her own ultimate, giving her the same mechanical difficulty as her peers in that if you endeavor to not use a shield, you'll need to be quite vigilant with your health bar. Being the first Pyro main attacker to contest Hu Tao, all synergies the Funeral Parlor director has are present in Father and then expanded upon, courtesy of the latter's more sustained uptime. The immense power of the Knave has not been overlooked. In the short time she's been out for, Arlecchino has on multiple occasions broke above 50% usage, being the only main DPS besides Neuvillette to consistently be able to do so. It's safe to assume she'll be there for quite some time. You may have noticed a recurring trend among the Harbingers, or several at that. It's those similarities that lend credence to their appeal in gameplay, most remarkable of which being how divergent they are from the expectations of their elements. Hydra's main strength comes from being inarguably the best companion element in Genshin by leaps and bounds, and while you could argue that's exactly what he's doing, being a main DPS, Childe definitely broke the mold of what we thought Hydra was supposed to be at the time. Animal's main strength comes from being entirely focused on reactions. Though not the first of his kind, Wanderer goes against that notion by being a main attacker. Pyro attackers are known for strong bursts of damage at the cost of shorter uptime compared to their colder counterparts' more sustained output. Arlecchino overrides that doctrine through a steady stream of damage, being able to literally fight forever if you want to. The Harbingers are not the only ones to go against the status quo, but there's a high chance future Harbingers will also subvert expectations. I wouldn't be surprised if Todi ended up being a screen nuker to go reverse melt or superconduct physical hybrid. The existence of delusions underlines their willingness to go against what is normal or acceptable. They're not afraid to break rules in the pursuit of power. Second distinction is their unusual mechanics, Childe being a bow user who practically discards his bow to acquire a set of daggers and a spear and go in melee range, Wanderer being at present the only person who attacks while flying in the air, and Arlecchino being unable to restore health except through her ultimate. To some, they may appear to be quirks no different from Emily's burning, Verena's HP drain mechanic, and Shinyu's plunging attacks, but I feel like the ones the Harbingers carry in particular, along with their penchant for going against the norm, establishes a foundation for belief that Harbingers in the future will also have unusual things to them that make playing them a challenge. In a good way, mind you. Third and final distinction. I should say it's more of a theory than a distinction, but it makes me really curious. The number associated with each Harbinger presumably corresponds to their strength or influence. I say influence because I doubt every Harbinger is a fighter. Childe and Wanderer are rank 11 and 6 respectively, which I think is somewhat appropriate for their current meta performance. That is assuming you were to invest in them vertically. Childe was conceptualized as a hyper carry, but then we realized he's just a power bottom for Shanli. Wanderer is decently strong, not the most impressive, but certainly no pushover. But Arlecchino is a freak of nature, being the number 4 Harbinger, and it's been stated that Harbingers from rank 3 and onwards are the creme de la creme when it comes to combat. That being said, the Harbingers don't exactly have the best track record when it comes to going toe-to-toe with the Archons. Signora was executed by Shogun, albeit after Traveler wore her death. Nahida gave Scaramouche La Chancla for being an angsty boy, Childe got his ass beat by Novelette, and Mavuika went toe-to-toe with Capitano, who is number 1, assuming Piero's director status has nothing to do with his actual power. By no means are they the strongest characters in Devat, but they're definitely a cut above the rest. If Arlecchino is top tier, I'd be very surprised if Colombina, Dottore, Capitano, and Piero are not right there along with her. And I certainly hope Sandrone, Pantalone, and Pulcinella, despite appearing to be more support or sub-DPS oriented than attacker, are also ranked up there. If nothing else, all that build-up and storytelling of these characters has paid off greatly with their in-game representations among the ones we have so far. That's just it with the Harbingers. Just as the Archons are popular for being the main gods of each region and having immense in-game power to show for it, the Harbingers are popular for being the main villains of each region, and so far also having immense in-game power to show for it, accounting for the fact that villains are more often than not more entertaining and intriguing for audiences due to tapping into a more gray area in terms of morality, appearance, and conduct, and I feel like they'll be the only ones capable of matching the Archons in popularity and general strength. Personally, I very much am excited to see Colombina and Sandrone, mostly because both of them have been hinted to be murderous psychopaths, which kind of belies their more gentle and delicate appearance. I'm a huge fan of subversion in characters, Arlecchino looking vicious and deadly but being surprisingly gentle, while Colombina and Sandrone look very gentle but are presumed to be much more vicious. I only hope we can see more of the Harbingers sooner. Taking over 2 years between Childe and Wanderer and then over a year between Wanderer and Arlecchino is too slow for my liking, though I understand they do that to keep the suspense and excitement. Or perhaps a number of them were never intended to be playable in the first place. In any case, they're definitely some of the best design units in Genshin Impact, both in game and in lore. What do you guys think about the Harbingers? And more importantly, who are you most anticipating to be released? You're welcome to share in the comments down below. For now though, if you enjoyed the video, a like and subscribe would be much appreciated. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and why not check out my video on the Archons if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.